with this record. She actually makes a copy for Sam to listen to when he gets back, something she normally doesn't do. And on Sam's copy, she writes, "Good ballad singer." Of course, Sam gets back, he listens to it, thoroughly unimpressed with Mr. Elvis Presley. So it's going to take Elvis an entire year of hanging out around this place, paying his dues, getting on Sam's very last nerve before he finally invites him back for his first real session. So a whole year has gone by since that recording we heard upstairs. Now Sammy's put together a band featuring Scotty Moore on the electric guitar and Bill Black on the upright bass, and he actually does need a frontman now to come into the studio and help him work through some new songs that he's gotten in from Nashville. So Marion's like, "Well, it's called the cute kid with the sideburns, isn't it, Sam?" "Oh, Marion, what did I tell you about that kid?" "Okay, call him up, get it over with." So Marion, she calls up Elvis, and before she can hang up that phone, he is through the front door. He knows that this is going to be his one and only shot at impressing Sam Phillips. So that night, Scotty Moore standing right there on that X on the floor by that piano with his electric guitar. Bill right over here on this one with his bass that only leaves one. Boom! Right here is where the future king stood. Now Bob Dylan, he's come into the studio, gotten down on his hands and knees, and he has kissed that X. You guys are more than welcome to do the same thing. So after a long night of going through all these songs from Nashville, there is nothing that these three guys out here are doing that's got Sam excited whatsoever. So you can imagine the way Elvis must have felt when Sam slowly walked out of that door, kind of holding his head, going, "Woo, okay guys, we're going to go ahead and take a break. I don't know, maybe we should just call it for the night. I'm going to go back and have a cigarette." So Sam leaves the room. Now Scotty and Bill, they are professional musicians. They are ready for a break. Maybe they're ready to get the heck out of here. So they start to lay down their instruments, but Elvis Presley, he knows that he is blowing this. He does not want to take a break, certainly doesn't want to go home, so he starts frantically jumping around the room, starts goofing around the sped up version of an old blues song by Arthur Big Boy Crudup. He's just trying to calm himself down, shake all of his nerves out. And even though Scotty and Bill, they have never heard this song in their lives, they're like, "All right, dude, we will jam with you one last time." So they pick their instruments back up and they start goofing around with Elvis. Now this finally catches Sam Phillips' ear. He comes back to that door, he's like, "Guys, what is this? This is great." They record it. A few days later, Sammy takes that recording to his really good friend that I mentioned upstairs, Mr. Dewey Phillips. And if you just happen to be sitting around WHBQ that steamy hot July night in 1954, whenever Dewey first puts that little record on the radio, you'd have heard something a lot like this. Now I gotta warn you, Dewey, he is an extremely unique character. It may be a little tough to understand him right at first.
Oh, yes, sir, good people, so Phillips. Let's bring the hottest cotton picking thing to country. Real hot blue coming through WHBQ and Hotel Chisca on the magazine floor. Is that right, Dave? That's right. Why you call Sam Putney? No, I gotta call Sam, Dave. Ah, Pete Picker. How you on there, Ern? Good to see you. How you on, buddy? Pretty good, Putney. It's more like it. It's all right. It's okay. Nervous, Snoop? All right. Just go on down and get your wheelbarrow load of mad hogs, run them through the front door and tell them Phillips sent you from Red. Hot and blue. Deep. Go. I got a new song we're gonna play here. They're gonna cut loose this new song. I mean, that'll flat get it.
Well, that's all right, Mama. That's all right for you. That's all right, Mama. Just any way you do it, that's all right. That's all right. That's all right, Mama. Any way you do.
So the kids, they go crazy. Dewey's phones are blowing up off the hook that night. Everybody's calling in, going, "Who's that kid singing That's All Right, Mama?" Dewey's going to play that song 14 more times over the next 2 hours, so Sam knows he has something hot on his hands. He takes Elvis into the cafe the very next day, signs him to a 3-year recording contract, and of course we all know that shy, impressionable teenager from Tupelo, he goes on to sell over 3 billion records. But after just 17 short months here on the Sun label, Sam Phillips, he's going to end up selling Elvis Presley's contract to RCA for just $35,000. Sam. However, if you'd have asked him about it to the day he passed away, he would have told you it was one of the wisest moves that he has ever made. In 1955, this teeny tiny little record label, it is essentially run by 2 people, Marion and Sam, and that is it. And they are on the verge of bankruptcy. So by selling Elvis's contract, Sam's able to use that money to pay off all of his debts, hire more employees, and turn this tiny little label into an international one. But the most important thing he is able to do for the first time ever, he can sign new artists artists and properly promote them. And one of the first guys that comes through that front door once Elvis is out of here is that young man right up there with the big giant smile on his face, Mr. Carl Perkins. Now Carly certainly does have a lot to smile about. He's going to write and record the first million-selling single for the Sun label. It's also going to be the first song in music history to be a crossover smash hit. It was top 5 on the country and western, rhythm and blues, and the pop charts all at the same time. And it was written at about 3 o'clock in the morning on a potato sack.
Well, it's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoe. You can do anything but lay off of my blue suede shoe.
And not long before Carl walked through that front door, Sam pulls up to work one day, gets out of his car. There's a young man standing outside with a guitar begging him to listen to his songs. This young man worked just up the street at the home equipment company as a salesman, but he was such a terrible salesman. One of the only things he ever sold in his entire life, it was a color television set to Marion here at Sun. It's none other than the man in black himself, Mr. Johnny Cash. Now Johnny was the most consistent hit maker here on the label. Songs like Folsom Prison Blues, Cry, 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 Hey Porter, and this song from May of 1956. You guys hear that scratchy sound in the background? I'll show you a really cool trick that Sam taught Johnny. Now back in those days, country music and drums did not go well together at all. In fact, if you played country music, you had a drummer in your band, you can forget about hearing any of your songs played on the radio, and you're definitely not going to play the Grand Ole Opry because they did not allow drums on their stage until 1974. But Johnny loved the sound of a snare drum. Of course, he wanted his songs on the radio, and you bet your mom that he wanted to play that Grand Ole Opry. So Sam showed him how to get around their little rule. You just weave a piece of paper through guitar strings like this, loosen them up a little bit, and you've got your very own snare sound.
I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the private line. Because you're mine, I walk the line.
Johnny really knew how to stretch a buck, ladies and gentlemen. Now, does anyone recognize the brooding character up there on the wall with the sunshades on? That is right, Mr. Roy Orbison. Now, even though Roy, he did not stick around here for very long in the label, he was never, ever comfortable with the way Sam was trying to produce his music. Sam really wanted Roy to be a rock and roller, a lot like Carl Perkins, but Roy knows about his own voice as well as we all do. It is much better suited for sweet pop ballads. So Roy did not stay for long, but he did have one hit while he was here. It was a song called Ooby Dooby, and it's written in 15 minutes by 2 college kids sitting on the roof of their frat house.
Hey baby, jump over here when you do the ooby dooby. I just gotta be there, ooby dooby, ooby dooby, ooby dooby, ooby dooby, ooby dooby, ooby dooby.
In case you guys didn't catch the title of that song, it's called Ooby Dooby. Now this brings us to the most famous photograph in rock and roll history. It was taken right in that exact spot, December 4th, 1956. The guy in the middle of the guitar, Mr. Carl Perkins, he is here at the studio that day recording a song called Matchbox. He's trying to follow up that smash hit single, Blue Suede Shoes. So Sam Phillips hires a professional piano player fresh into town from Louisiana to come into the studio and help beef up the sound of Carl's recordings. It actually just released his very first single on the Sun label just 3 days before this photo, so nobody knows who he is yet, but we all know him today. The guy on the far left, Mr. Jerry Lee Lewis. And of course, at the piano, a 21-year-old Elvis. Now, even though he's only been at RCA for just over a year, he's already played about 250 live shows. Love Me Tender has just come out. Bam! His first major motion picture from Hollywood. And just 2 months before this, Elvis performed Love Me Tender on The Ed Sullivan Show and 62 million people tuned in to watch him do that. So he is uber famous. He's here in Memphis, misses all of his buddies here at Sun. He just kind of drops by unexpectedly to hang out with Sam in the control room and watch Carl and Jerry and the rest of the guys do their thing out here on the floor. Now, of course, Sam, he recognizes this once-in-a-lifetime photographic opportunity. He is not going to let it pass him by. So he calls up his buddies at the newspaper, calls up Johnny Cash, come on down to the studio, you guys, Elvis is here. We're all hanging out, having a great time. So everybody comes over, the newspaper guys take all their photos, they leave. Of course, what happens when you get a bunch of musicians together in one tiny little room full of instruments? A jam session breaks out. They started playing all the songs that they know and love and grew up with. Now, Samuel Cornelius Phillips, he is going to do what naturally comes to him. He is in the business of capturing moments in time. He has his recording engineer, cowboy Jack Clement, fire up those tape machines in the control room. Doesn't tell anybody that he is doing this. Comes out of that door, joins the party, and he secretly tapes the entire session. Now, the next day, this photo is going to come out in the newspapers with the caption $1 Million Quartet. And then in 2003, finally, RCA released just about everything they think that exists of the audio from that day. So if any of you guys have ever wanted to be a fly on any of these walls the day that that went down, now you can do that. This recording is available wherever you buy your favorite music. That includes the cafe next door.
He tried so hard until he got much better, boy. Much better than that record of mine. Oh, no, wait now. It's this way. He was real slender. He got up there and he said, had a little slower than me. So, started off. He said, what key did I do it in? What key did I do the only rule in? He said, hey, you know I can be found. Sitting home all alone. If you can't come around at least a telephone.
That heavy hand you hear on the piano, it's pretty unmistakable. The killer himself, Mr. Jerry Lee Lewis. Now, Jerry, he is literally the last man standing. He is 81 years old. 3 years ago, he got married to wife number 7. He also just opened up a club on Beale Street 2 years ago. I can also tell you guys from personal experience, I've been lucky enough to record him twice. And while both times he was very slow getting to the piano, when he sat down, it was all still there, which is truly amazing. Now, Jerry Lee, he is from Faraday, Louisiana. He would end up giving Sun the 2 biggest selling singles in its entire history. Number 2 was Whole Lot of Shaking Going On. Does anybody know number 1? That's right, Great Balls of Fire, released in November of 1957. Within 10 days of that song coming out, it sells over 1 million copies. So Jerry Lee, he did amazing things for this tiny little building. He also felt that it was okay to put out his giant cigar on the low E key of that piano right over there, just so everyone would always know that Jerry Lee Lewis was here. That brings about 1959. Remember, Sam, he's only got that 10-year lease, so that's coming up for renewal, but the bands he is starting to work with, they're getting bigger, more instruments, the recording technology is starting to change, so he feels at this place, it's just getting a little too cramped. So he packs everything up, buys his own building just behind us, and he opens up the Sam Phillips recording service, and that is also still a fully functioning studio. It's owned by his 2 sons, Knox and Jerry, and it's run by his granddaughter, Hallie. So that means for the next 27 years, this place is a musical ghost town. Then in 1987, we officially opened up the doors again. We started giving tours during the day, and we started to do recordings again at night. And when the music community finds out about that, they were beating down that door trying to get in here and recapture some of that Sun Studio magic. Guys like Ringo Starr, Paul Simon, Billy Swan, Def Leppard, Beck, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Chris Isaac, John Mellencamp. Also a tiny little band out of Ireland, they call themselves U2. They recorded 5 songs off their Rattle and Hum record right here in this room using that blue drum kit right behind you guys. So that brings us around to today. You might be wondering what's real, what's authentic. But I can tell you nothing in this tiny little building is a recreation or a reproduction. The floor tiles you guys are standing on right now, Marion and Sam on their hands and knees, put down every single square. And all those guys that we talked about today, along with scores of others, they all gave the performances of their lifetimes, standing on these very same floors. Also, all the acoustic paneling you see on the walls and ceiling, Marion painted those herself. The lighting fixtures, doorways, glass windows. This place was a hollow, empty shell whenever Sam got it, and he spent the last 3 months of 1949 with Marion and one friendly carpenter, putting up all this stuff themselves. So one last thing I want to show you that is original and authentic to the studio. It's this pretty lady right here. This is one of the original session microphones that Sam used throughout the 1950s for vocals. That's right, Elvis, he sang on this. He also caressed this microphone, along with all those other guys we talked about. Normally something like that would probably be in a giant glass box somewhere where no one would ever touch it again. But one of the last things that Sam did before he passed away was donate it to us with the specific instructions that everyone is always allowed to touch it, hold it, have fun with it, take pictures with it. So when you guys are doing that in a few minutes, please be very careful with her. She is the last of her kind. And for me, when you're taking those pictures, be sure and sing it to the S on the front so it appears you know what you are doing. And if you need any inspiration, you can look right behind you on that wall right over there. Elvis certainly knew how to do it. So that brings in the tour, guys. Hope you had a good time. Once again, my name's Curry. I'll be waiting for you in Marion's office. I'll have some souvenirs, be able to answer questions. One last thing before we go, tipping. Certainly not expected, but it is accepted. I just want to let you guys know that to me, this is one of the most fascinating tales of our lifetime. It is an honor and a privilege to share it every day. I want to leave you guys with this one last thought. A wise man, he once told me that eventually we will all turn into stories. So make sure that yours is one worth telling. Thank you guys for listening. Give yourselves a round of applause.